beautiful souls, it's Lori. Welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to share with you all my top 25 books of the year. I didn't manage to make an absolute top 10, but I'll share my top 25 here, and the list of the exact top 10 is going to be in the description box below. So the reason I wanted to do this today is because I read over 100 books in 2017, and I feel like some of them were so amazing. I really need to share them with you all. I did make a lot of sections on my websites under resources where I have different categories of resources, including some of the books that I read and want to read, so you can check that out. But for now, I'll just share with you my top 25 of 2017. So I separated them in 3 categories. So there's my top 10 personal development self-help books, my top 10 biographies, and also my top 5 novels. So I will share with you my biographies first, then my personal development books, and finally my novels. So most of the biographies I read this year were actually audiobooks, so I don't have a physical copy to show you. But I do believe biographies are really good audiobooks because you don't really have to take notes. Most times you just want to hear about it, so it's a really nice kind of book to listen to. So the number 1 biography that I loved this year was Born a Crime by Trevor Noah. It's an amazing biography. It's his whole story, being born in South Africa as a half white, half black child, and kind of his whole life story. And it's really interesting, and even though there were some really tough times, it's still a pretty funny book since he's a comedian. So that was an incredible biography. The second book that I would recommend for biographies is The Promise of a Pencil: How an Ordinary Person Can Create Extraordinary Change by Adam Braun. And I actually read that book, so that's why I have a hard copy. I read it earlier in 2017, and it was an amazing book. It would also be very good as an audiobook. I will probably listen to it in the future. So The Promise of a Pencil is basically the story of Adam Braun, and as a student he kind of figured out what he wanted to do and eventually created a very, very successful non-profit organization called Pencils of Promise that builds schools in third world countries. So it's an amazing book. Number 3 is Eat, Pray, Love by Elizabeth Gilbert. I recently listened to that one and it was really, really good. She had a pretty interesting adventure, and it's really cool to kind of be able to live it through her words, especially since she's such an incredible author and is very talented with words. Number 3 is The Last Black Unicorn by Tiffany Haddish, and honestly this one doesn't really teach you much, but it's very hilarious. I personally love Tiffany Haddish. I think she's a hilarious comedian. And I love all of her stand-ups, so I definitely enjoyed her book just because it was a really good laugh. It was so funny, and she has a very interesting life story, and I guess it's kind of inspiring to know that she came from pretty much nothing and made herself into the success she is today. Next is Wild by Cheryl Strayed, and this is one of the last books that I listened to, and it was very, very good. Cheryl Strayed is also really good with words, and her adventure is incredible. It's something I really wish I could do, honestly. I don't think I ever will hike the entire Pacific Crest Trail, but it definitely motivated me to be in nature more, like go camping and go on hikes and things like that. Next is When Breath Becomes Air by Paul Kalanithi. I think I pronounced that right. I listened to that earlier last year, and it's the story of a medical student who was diagnosed with cancer and eventually died. So it's his biography up until the day he died, and it was completed by his wife, I believe, if I remember correctly. And it's a very moving story. I cried a couple times. It's really interesting to see the retrospection and kind of like the acceptance of death that he goes through as his cancer progresses. So it's a very enlightening story, I'd say. Next, for number 7 is Lion by Sue Brierley, and they did make a movie very recently. So I listened to that earlier in 2017, and I actually made a full review on my second channel, I believe. But it was a really good audiobook, and once again, it was a really interesting story. Most of the book talks about him when he was lost as a child in India, and eventually his adoption and everything. But there's a very long part of the story that's him, like his life before he got lost and his life while he was lost as a child. And I guess it gives you a very interesting perspective on childhood, because he had a very different childhood than most of us. And honestly, I kept thinking, like, as a child, as me, Lori, as a child, what would I have done? And yeah, I guess And obviously it has a very nice ending as well, so it's a really good biography. Number 8 is In the Country We Love, My Family Divided by Diane Guerrero. I also listened to that one. She's an actress on Orange is the New Black and a few other shows. I think she's on Jane the Virgin as well. And her parents are from Colombia, and it's basically the story of her coming back from school one day and then being gone, just disappeared, like with water on the stove and all of that. And they'd been deported because they were illegal immigrants from Colombia. Just saying it kind of gives me chills. Like, I find it really opened my eyes to the whole immigration problems that are occurring nowadays still. So it's a really good book for that. And the fact that she's sharing her story just to help other people who might be in similar situations as her, and to trying to create change in the immigration laws that are present right now is very noble. Number 9 is #GirlBoss by Sophia Amoruso. I feel like most people have read that book already, but it's a pretty good biography. It does have a bunch of tips and tricks also, like for business and for finances and things like that. But in general, it's also a very interesting biography to kind of see this girl that used to be dumpster diving and kind of barely getting by, build an empire, pretty much. So yeah, it's a very inspiring book. And finally, number 10 for biographies is Unfiltered by Lily Collins. This is a book she wrote kind of about her life in general, but it talks a lot about her body dysmorphia problems and her eating disorder and things like that. So it can really help anybody who is in a similar situation, even if you don't suffer from an actual eating disorder but just have body dysmorphia. It can help you a lot. Now moving on to personal growth self-help books. Number 1 is The Four Agreements, a Toltec wisdom book by Don Miguel Ruiz. It's been my favorite for ages. This is one that I've read already twice and will reread over and over again. I just love how simple and wise at the same time this book can be. So yeah, definitely a must read. Number 2 is The Gifts of Imperfection. Let Go of Who You Think You're Supposed to Be and Embrace Who You Are, Your Guide to a Wholehearted Life by Brené Brown. And I love everything Brené Brown does. She's amazing. She's an amazing researcher and writer. I love everything she does. This book is a pretty small book, and it's full of really good advice to live a wholehearted life and just like be happier in general. Number 3 is Quiet, The Power of Introverts in a Word That Can't Stop Talking by Susan Cain. And I actually listened to that one, but I did buy a hard copy when I found it at a thrift store because I will reread it. It's very good, especially if you're introverted, but also if you have a lot of introverted people in your life. It can help you kind of understand their needs and how they operate a little bit better. It really did help me kind of figure myself out, understand why I am the way I am, and kind of accept the fact that it's okay to not be an extrovert. Number 4 is The Book of Joy by His Holiness Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And I listened to that one recently. It was full of wisdom. It's really interesting to see 2 very spiritual men coming from very different religious backgrounds agree on so many things about life. It's actually interesting to listen to because they use different voices depending on who's talking. So listening to it is also a very good idea. Number 5 is The Gift of Anger by Arun Ghandi. He's the grandson of Mahatma Gandhi, and he just talks about a lot of lessons that he learned through spending time with his grandfather. And obviously, everyone can learn from Gandhi, so it's really interesting to see his grandson learning so many teachings from this very wise man. Number 6 is The Power of Now, a guide to spiritual enlightenment by Eckhart Tolle. And I actually love that book. It's also a pretty small book, and it is so transformative. When I read it, it truly transformed me. Learning everything about like the ego and how to learn to recognize it is so important in a transformative journey, in a personal growth journey. Number 7 is The Universe Has Your Back by Gabrielle Bernstein, and it's actually a really good book on the law of attraction, manifestation, and that kind of stuff. I listened to it, but I will definitely purchase a hard copy and reread it in the future. Number 8 is The Wisdom of Sundays by Oprah Winfrey, and it's so good. I actually listened to it, but I want to buy the book because it's actually really beautiful. It's so well designed, but it's very expensive. So if you know Oprah, she has Super Soul Sundays, or she did have that before, and she had a lot of very spiritual, growth-oriented guests on the show. So basically each chapter is a different guest and kind of the main teachings and interview portion, I guess, of their time on the show. So it's kind of an all-in-one encompassing self-help teachings books. Does that make sense? Number 9 is You Are a Badass, How to Stop Doubting Your Greatness and Start Living an Awesome Life by Cheryl. And it's a really good intro book to the law of attraction because it's not complex at all, and it's really made for anybody who just want to like dip their toes in it without being like 100% knowledgeable and committed and all of that. It's a really good introduction book for that. And finally, number 10 for personal growth books is Get Your Shit Together, How to Stop Worrying About What You Should Do So You Can Finish What You Need to Do and Start Doing What You Want to Do by Sarah Knight, the author of The Life-Changing Magic of Not Giving Up. And this is her second book, and it was the best out of the 3 if you ask me. I did read the other 2, and it's kind of like a productivity almost kind of book, but it's very simple and it's really made to simplify your life. And she's also a very good author. She's really hilarious. She has so many little puns and references and stuff. It's really fun to read through. And finally, before this video gets crazy long, I want to share with you all 5 novels that I really enjoyed this year. I didn't really read that many, actually listen to all of them. I think novels are also a very good kind of books to listen to, since you don't really take notes on novels unless you're reading them for school. So the first one was The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas, and I listened to that and it was really good. It really opened my eyes to the issue and made me comprehend the issue with the problems with racism in the United States and even like anywhere really, and police brutality and all that stuff. Honestly, it really enlightened me and made me very concerned for the actual cause, the actual problem that exists in our world too. Number 2 was The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. They did come out with a TV show, and I watched the TV show first and then I wanted to listen to the book. And I'm really excited for season 2 of the TV show because the season 1 ends with where the book ended. And I know Margaret Atwood is very involved in the writing of the show too, so she's probably gonna have some say as to what happens next. And people who read that book, even for the last 10 plus years, have never known what happened after the end of the first book, so it'll be very interesting. It's set in a futuristic kind of society where people can't really reproduce much. Most people are infertile, so the government is overthrown, and all the fertile women become handmaids, and the rich people kind of each have a handmaid, and they have weird ritual to try to conceive children for themselves through the handmaid. It's a very disturbing concept, but you can see a very slight parallel with the whole reproductive rights issues that are happening in the United States right now. And just in general, it makes you kind of aware of potential problems in the future and how civil unrest can end up being very bad. And Margaret Atwood is just like such a good author, and she's so creative, honestly. So I really love reading her books. Next is The Alchemist by Paul Coelho. You can really read into it and read above the actual story. Some people get kind of stuck on like the impossibility of the story, but there's so much to learn from it. It's just a boy in the desert that managed to manifest things in his life, I guess. So definitely give it a read. Number 4 is 1984 by George Orwell, and honestly, I never understood like any of the references, and I know it's a classic, but we don't really read that in school in Quebec, so I'm really glad I got to read it and understand the references, Big Brother and all of that. But it's really interesting, especially when you can parallel it to like problems with the NSA and things like that. So I like drawing parallels between novels and actual life. I don't know, maybe that's just me. And finally, the last one is Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, and he's also an incredible author. It's also a classic that I'm really glad I finally got to listen to this year. I do have them in hard copies, but I did listen to both of those, and they're kind of like futuristic worlds, like dystopian societies type thing, but they're more realistic than, let's say, like Divergent and The Hunger Games. So I think that's pretty much it. That's 25 books, and this is a pretty long video, so I'll leave it to that. I'll have the full list down below, as well as like the absolute top 10 out of all of those. Let me know what are your favorite books, like just one or top 5, top 10, whatever. I'm always interested in adding more books to my bookshelves on Goodreads, so just let me know down below. I'm really excited to hear what you have to say, and if you've read any of those, also let me know which ones you loved and which one you didn't really like so much. Thanks for watching. I love you guys, and I will see you all in another video very soon. Bye!